coach of Green Bay. Now he has Arthur Smith as his offensive coordinator. So in 5 years, Mariota has had 4 different systems. In 5 years, he's had 4 different systems. Now, the good news is, like I said, this is a make-or-break year for the former Oregon Duck Heisman Trophy winner. Here's what most people don't know. On first down, when the Titans passed the ball over the past 2 years, Marcus Mariota is second in completion percentage and number 1 in passer rating. So what that means is when they don't run the ball on first down like they do 90% of the time, Mariota's effective. The defense knows what's coming with the Titans. In the red zone, I watched, I think, 15 games last year. It was run, and then on third down, let's try to have Mariota make a play. Now, people don't know this either about Mariota. 2 years ago when they made the playoffs, they were losing, I think, 20-3 at Kansas City. Mariota comes onto the field, and at halftime, he says, I'm calling the plays at the line of scrimmage. He takes the Titans, who are a big underdog, and they beat the Kansas City Chiefs 22-20. Mariota had a phenomenal second half. Again, I'm not making excuses for this guy. He's been injured. He's had 4 different systems in 5 years, but enough is enough. You have to produce. I have the Titans winning 10 games, and I think with Mariota and Derrick Henry, who's a phenomenal running back, it took Matt LaFleur. This is the one question I have about Matt LaFleur in Green Bay. It took Matt LaFleur about 9 games to realize that Derrick Henry is legit. The Titans were 5-1 last year when Henry rushed for over 16 times a game. So the only thing they have to do this year is they got to mix it up. Like, I think LaFleur should do this with Aaron Rodgers, and they should do this in Tennessee. Let Mariota come to the line of scrimmage and do a run-pass option. Let him figure out what the play is going to be, because when he does that, he's one of the best in the fourth quarter, and he's one of the best on first down when he throws the ball. So that's my basic description of Mariota. If he doesn't get it done, then yes, it's time to move on. But I think he'll be fine, and I think they'll win 10 games this year in a very tough division.
Well, I will say this. We had a discussion based on our Fantasy File segment with our guy Dylan Busby, and Mariota was the subject of the conversation. And basically, what I've seen from Mariota, and I really don't blame this on him. Again, it goes back to what you were just saying, the constant change of offensive systems. He's got all the athletic talent, and he's a very smart football person. You can tell that. He's got all the quarterback intangibles, so to speak. My problem I've seen with him when I watch tape of him is inconsistencies in the little things, the tangible things. His footwork on a 3-step drop isn't always consistent, even, like it should be. His 3- and 5-step drops aren't consistent from play to play. His arm throwing angle and motion isn't consistent, and therefore you don't get consistency in accuracy and velocity all the time. I will say, and I want to ask this, the last couple of games I've watched him, especially last game, I saw a lot of that stuff cleaned up. And I'm wondering, is this because even though we have a different offensive coordinator, it's still the same head coach with the same viewpoints that he was given to his quarterback last year? Is that going to make a difference in what we see from Tannehill? And is he going to make a jump now that he's actually got a same system that we saw, like you said, he started to get comfortable in?
Yeah, I think anytime you have some sort of success, I mean, look, Mike Vrabel, again, Mariota hasn't played for really any elite offensive coaches. Mike Vrabel is a run-first guy, a defensive guy, kind of old school. But when you think of last year, right, they beat the Philadelphia Eagles, a playoff team. They beat the Dallas Cowboys. They beat the New England Patriots, and they beat the Houston Texans. They beat 4 teams. This is still a young team. They have Delaney Walker, who's the tight end, who's a veteran, but they have young receivers. They have young running backs. Their offensive line, I have them ranked 5th on the year. So I think one thing I've noticed in training camp is it's almost like we're watching this team grow up before our eyes. Again, this isn't a Jameis Winston situation where the team's not winning despite having a ton of talent. They went 9-7. They made the playoffs. They went 9-7 last year. They played the Colts in Week 16. And the winner was going into the playoffs, and Mariota wasn't healthy. And that's another problem with Mariota. As much as I love him, you've got to be healthy. The only way that you're good or great, like I'll give you an example. LeBron James of the NBA has never missed a playoff game with injury. You look at the NBA, right? Kevin Durant, James Harden. You look at all these people. They've missed games. Mariota has missed games. Eli Manning hasn't missed a start since he's been with the New York Giants because he's been healthy. That's a big part of being great. So, I think big confidence, second year coming into the league. Mariota put on 15 pounds, and you bring up a great point because there are times when Mariota looks like a franchise quarterback, and there are times where he misses the 7-yard quick in route because his mechanics aren't stepped up. He went back to Hawaii this summer. He worked on his mechanics. He worked on his fundamentals. I love what this kid does off the field, charity. I think I said this on Twitter, and you were part of that conversation. There aren't many teams in the league that do more for the inner cities and the charity work than the Tennessee Titans and the Green Bay Packers. So I'm rooting for this kid. But again, as much as I'm a fan of his, if he doesn't come through this year and he doesn't have a good year, it's time for the Tennessee Titans to move away from Marcus Mariota.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what jumped out at me right away was the mechanics looked just more consistent, cleaner. And that's the only nitpick I had of him because I think everything else is there. And the big one there is came up with Baker. His maturity for his age, I don't think he gets enough credit for. And I think if the mechanics part for him comes together, all the athletic tools are there. The fact that he's mature at his age, I think is going to make I think it makes for one of those catastrophic leaps if he can get the mechanical part down. And you don't see that often because it's usually not a kid this age he was actually more mentally prepared, honestly, to come to the NFL to play quarterback than he was physically, I guess, is the easiest way to say it.
Yeah, no, he's a very humble guy. Even when he won the Heisman, he just thanked his family, his parents. I've watched numerous documentaries. I mean, listen, he's not on social media, but, Tennessee, it's actually funny because Tennessee wants him to be the face of the team, and he's reluctant because every time he wins, he thanks, his offensive linemen. That's the one negative play I had against Mariota is that he's almost too humble. And what I mean by that is when a coach calls a play, he's been raised to say that you make it work. The coach, but sometimes a quarterback like an Aaron Rodgers, like a Tom Brady, they get into arguments with their coordinators because they do know more. And Mariota's a very, very smart player, but he's too humble. I wish he would do more what he did when he was with when they played the Kansas City Chiefs 2 years ago in the second half of the playoffs, and I'd say I'm taking over the game. I'm calling the plays at the line of scrimmage.
Maybe we'll see that more when he gets more comfortable, and hopefully, because I like the kid too, and I liked him coming out. I thought honestly, if you were smart, you would have took him number 1 overall because I think Winston was. Again, I say this because it's about the easiest way, and it's going to age me. Those two are like the bizarro versions of each other when it came to maturity and actually being ready to be the face of a franchise. Because Winston had all the mechanical tools really that you wanted, but because his mental, he's not mature enough in his mental capacity, he makes dumb mistakes. Whereas you knew if Mariota wasn't going to do that, but Mariota was more of a project when it came to the mechanics part. So. Again, I would rather take the guy that I can physically work with because I can't. There's no button or there's no coaching for maturity. And so if I have a maturity problem with a quarterback, to me that's a huge red flag. I would rather take a chance and be wrong on a guy that's mature and just doesn't pan out mechanically than a guy that has all the tools, but because I can't give him an elixir. I can't make him wake up one day and be grown up and decide that he wants to do all the things that are necessary to run an NFL franchise.
Well, first of all, props to you for using the term elixir in a football show. So I definitely give you a round of applause for that. But my point is, I agree with you. I said when they came out, I said that Marcus Mariota will win a playoff game before Jameis Winston. I was correct. And one of the things, forget about Jameis Winston's off the field issues. One of the things that when I used to write for one of these websites, I had access to college film, game film, and there was a stat that most people didn't even pay attention to in the NFL draft. Jameis Winston's final year at Florida State, he had the second most turnovers when he threw the ball more than 15 yards down the field. Marcus Mariota had the second highest completion percentage when he threw the ball more than 15 yards. And what that means is Jameis Winston just relies on his arm strength and his athleticism, and he wasn't looking off the safety. Teams got film of him after his first year as a starter, and then the second year, he was a turnover machine. So again, he was the second most in the country in throwing interceptions and passes over 15 yards. And what has plagued him this for the past 3 or 4 years? It's been turnovers. He has 58 interceptions, 38 fumbles in 4 years. That's a lot of turnovers.
And those turnovers come off of bad decisions. Just terrible bad decisions that drive, coordinators and head coaches nuts. That's what it is. But
he never looks off his receiver. He
Right.
never looks awful.
Well, sticking to quarterbacks that are young and that you are very high on, our next question involves another favorite of yours. So, Sam Darnold looks good with all the free agent additions and their draft choices. Are the Jets just a talented roster? Or are they ready to make a playoff push this year?
Well, here's my philosophy here with Darnell. For the first, think about how sad this is. There was a poll question where over 40,000 Jet fans answered last year, and the number one quarterback in Jets franchise history, voted on by the fans, Chad Pennington. Chad Pennington.
Really?
Not Joe Namath. Chad Pennington. Yeah, people don't even know who he is.
I'm
Chad
surprised
Pennington
by
went to
that.
I was surprised by it, but if you look at what the Jets have done over their course, they have not had a franchise quarterback in their prime since Joe Namath. I love what the Jets did. Think about this. They signed C.J. Mosley, linebacker, from the Ravens, and Le'Veon Bell from the Steelers. One could argue that they signed the best linebacker in free agent, and they got the best all-purpose running back in the NFL. Le'Veon Bell, in the history of the NFL, has more scrimmage yards per game than any other running back in the history of the NFL.
Yeah, that's hard to wrap your mind around it, especially because he sat out a whole year, and he seemed to be awfully nicked up where he was missing a game or two, and yet that production. So that's, yeah, he baffles me as a player and a person.
Listen, I think, there's been only, I think we have a chance this year, not getting, I'll get back to the Jets in a second, but I think we have a chance this year. There's only been 2 running backs in the history of the NFL to have 1,000 yards rushing and 1,000 yards receiving. It was Roger Craig of San Francisco and Marshall Faulk of the St. Louis Rams when they were in St. Louis before they moved. But I think Le'Veon Bell, Christian McCaffrey, and Alvin Kamara all have a chance to catch 1,000 yards receiving and rush for 1,000 yards.
Oh, in this day and age, that's definitely doable because a lot of these teams nowadays can run off large chunks because they're running out of a shotgun or even that the RPO really opens up a run game because you just get stuck as a linebacker. Either choice you make is almost wrong. It's a nightmare for the defensive linebackers there. So, yeah, I can see that happening. It's a new era. So you pass a lot, but the run is actually coming back because defenses are getting smaller and faster, so now you can get your big uglies to push on them. So that's definitely doable.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I mean, listen, going back to the Jets, they drafted Quinton Williams from Alabama, who could turn out to be the best defensive player in the draft. And this is what I like. Look, for years, the Jets hired defensive coaches, Todd Bowles, Rex Ryan, Herman Edwards, the list goes on and on. But they finally have an offensive coach in Adam Gase. But here's the problem. I mean, we saw this with Rex Ryan and the Jets. Rex Ryan leaves the Jets. He goes to the Buffalo Bills. He doesn't do anything there. For all of Gase's accolades, he's 23-25 as a head coach. And their defensive coordinator, look, the Jets have a ton of talent on defense. I just found out before I came to the show that Brandon Copeland, the Jets linebacker, has been suspended for 4 games for PEDs. They lost Avery Williams, who torn ACL. He had over 100 tackles last year. But Greg Williams, their defensive coordinator, I didn't like this hire at all. He hasn't led a top 10 defense in points against since 2010. So I wasn't a big fan of Adam Gase because I don't like hiring someone in the division Adam Gase has never won, and the thing that bothered me the most is when Adam Gase went in for that interview, he didn't wow